going on, everybody? Welcome back to the ILLMented Reviews. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, the ILLMented Reviews episode 10 is coming at you live, and we're going to take it back to the 90s, specifically 1995, with a film directed by the incredibly creative Terry Gilliam, and it is called 12 Monkeys. Yes, 12 Monkeys. This is a film I've seen more than a handful of times in my life. I remember watching this movie when it first came out and liking it, but being slightly disappointed with it. And I think every time I've watched this film throughout the years, it's totally grown on me. But yeah, directed by Terry Gilliam, who's pretty famous for directing Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Brazil, The Fisher King, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. What else did he do? Time Bandits, which also deals with time travel like 12 Monkeys. Tideland in 2005, which I recently watched a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed that movie. But Terry Gilliam is one of those very, very creative minds, and he does shit that's completely outside the box. And just by those type of films, you know exactly what I'm talking about if you've seen that. Those are the films that I've seen. I've seen the Parnassus one too. I didn't really care for that one, but the Imaginary Parnassus, whatever it's called. But anyways, I digress. 12 Monkeys starring Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt, and Madeleine Stowe. Madeleine Stowe is so beautiful in this movie. I was kind of thinking about it too. Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt were having pretty big 1995 because this movie actually came out after Seven for Brad Pitt in 1995. And also, Bruce Willis had dropped Die Hard with a Vengeance in 95 also. So, and I'm not sure if that movie, I'm pretty sure it was a box office success because they kept making them. So, but all those movies are pretty successful. And I actually had to look up in the box office to see if this movie was a success because I wasn't really too sure, but it did make quite a bit of money. Now, to my amazement, there was only a $30 million budget on this film. And it's just so much bigger than a $30 million budget, and it made like 169 million worldwide and stuff. So it was kind of a success. I always thought it was a flop at the time, but anyways, I digress. Getting into a quick little synopsis of 12 Monkeys. Basically, this one is set in the future in 2035. And the world has basically been destroyed by a virus, and a virus that took out 99% of the population in 1996, leaving only 1% of the survivors basically forced to live underground because they cannot live on the surface because the air is polluted and everything is, contaminated and stuff like that. So in steps our main character, Bruce Willis, who is in a kind of like a jail facility and in the future, and basically, he volunteers to do something for the people that run this. He doesn't really know what he's getting himself into. Ultimately, he gets sent back in time to gather information so they can kind of figure out what's going on in their time in 2035, so they can ultimately figure things out so they can repopulate the world and stuff like that. Repopulate the actual world. Because now animals have taken over the world and things like that. So he kind of gets sent back to the year 1990, and then it goes back and forth, and then he ends up in 1996 and stuff like that. And his goal is to not change the past for the future, but it's to gain the information so they can help the future progress. So that is essentially your synopsis of the film. Now, my thoughts on 12 Monkeys. Man, this is a really interesting film. It's kind of an interesting time to be talking about this type of narrative. A huge virus, a huge pandemic that destroyed the world and stuff. Basically what we're coming off of right now. I mean, the pandemic, I guess, is still kind of going on. I mean, we still have COVID, things like that. But it's interesting to see it from this point of view where it destroyed 99% of the world, and the 1% living is forced to live underground, and they can't be on top of the earth and stuff like that. And it kind of puts the reality that we're living in right now as kind of, it's kind of a perspective of how scary this possibly could be. So it's kind of an interesting time to revisit this film and stuff like that. But yeah, 12 Monkeys is a film that's not that hard to follow. I think people always get this movie a little bit construed because there is a lot of time jumping. Like, it starts out in 2035, he's in jail, he gets sent back to 1990, which isn't really where they wanted to send him. Because the virus that took over the world, that killed off the whole world, happens in 1996. But that's where things get really interesting. It goes back to 1990. and he meets Brad Pitt's character, who is in a kind of like a nut house. That's probably not politically correct. I probably just got canceled there. But actually, even say in the movie that they don't call him crazies. But anyways, he's kind of like in this nut house and stuff. Like something happens with the cops, and he gets there, and he starts spewing all this stuff about how the world ends in like 1996 and stuff. He gets thrown in this loony bin, and he meets Brad Pitt's character, and then things kind of transpire from there. And then he goes back to the future, and then he ends back up in 1996, where ultimately he ends up not meeting her in 1996, but in 1990 he meets Madeleine Stowe's character, which she is a psychiatrist and stuff. And there's a really cool development throughout this film and stuff, because you're kind of thinking like, is it in his head? What's really going on with his character? Is he going back in time and stuff, but it's really just all in his head? Like it's kind of got all that type of thing going on and stuff. And there's all these little cool anecdotes throughout the film that's kind of progressing the narrative throughout the whole film, and I really like the construction of this. Now, you just have to pay attention. Like I said, it time jumps quite a bit through 1990, 1996, the future, but the narrative progresses itself quite well. There's a lot of really cool social commentary that's going on here. There's a lot of like little hidden things that kind of develop the narrative throughout the film that I don't want to give away. I don't want to say too much about the film, but there's one key thing in the film that I really like, and it's like that 180 thing where, she is totally convinced that Bruce Willis's character is crazy because he's talking all this shit about the world ending and all this stuff, and then she starts to figure out things, and things start to come to light, and she's like, well, maybe he's not really that crazy and stuff. And then there's this whole scene with this bullet where he gets sent back to like World War I, gets shot, they pull it out, she analyzes the bullet, and things kind of come to fruition right there. Things kind of are hitting the light, and I love that. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool things in this film, man. I think one of my favorite scenes in the entire film is got to be the scene where Bruce Willis and Madeleine Stowe are sitting in the theater towards the end, and they're watching Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Now, if you're not familiar with Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, this probably wouldn't make any sense, but the contrast between the two films is like undeniable. It's uncanny. Like, it's so cool because if you've seen Vertigo, it deals with like doppelgangers and doubles and things like that, and that's a straight contrast to the core narrative here in this film, and I think that's a really cool thing to throw into the movie. Something I never really noticed until I was watching this time. I'm like, oh my god, I'm such a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, so when I saw that, they show clips of The Birds and other films and stuff like that, but that's a really key moment in the film. And but yeah, the whole construction of this movie is really good. Now, I think I was a little bit disappointed back in the day when I first watched this movie because I was expecting it to be a lot more action. I'm thinking sci-fi action type film, especially coming off of like, what I was used to watching with Bruce Willis, the Die Hard movies and things like that. This one doesn't really actually have a lot of action. It has a lot of tension. It has a lot of mystery. It has a lot of suspense to it. And that's really what it is. It's really about the mystery of really what's going on. Because it does deal with like mental illness and other things and stuff. And this whole time continuum thing is fantastic. I really think this movie is super underrated in the terms of what the core narrative is really trying to say in this. I think it's fantastic. I will say the 4K, beautiful. It looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. It's unbelievable. I was just blown away by the picture quality, the sound, the way it's mixed. The 5.1 is mixed very, very well. Pans through. It's mixed very, very well. And the score by Paul Buckmaster, it just really accentuates the whole film and stuff. But really, really good stuff. But yeah, this was such a great watch for me, man. Without giving everything away, I know the ending to a lot of people is a little ambiguous. I don't honestly think it's overly that ambiguous. I know it's kind of like meant for you to kind of figure things out a little bit, but I don't think it's like that ambiguous. I think that you could probably come to the conclusion that you're going to be happy with, and it's probably correct. I don't know. But yeah, overall, 12 Monkeys is a fantastic movie. It really is. Like the ending of this movie kind of really, it struck me this time, and I was like, wow. That's some good stuff. That's some really, really good stuff. The movie runs 129 minutes, and it really doesn't have any downtime through the whole thing. This thing is very, very well paced because it does take place in so many different times, like 2035, 1990, 1996. It goes back to World War I. I believe it drops into, I think it's 1917, I think, is when he has that moment there and stuff like that. So there's all these different things. And going back to the budget, I'm just like, astounded only cost $30 million to make this film. It's pretty crazy, but yeah, the locations are fantastic in this. They did a great job shooting this film, like in Baltimore in 1990, Philadelphia in 1996 and stuff, and it looks really, really good. There's actually moments in the film where if you're looking on the walls where they put all the posters and shit, like all the street teams, there's ILLMented posters everywhere. And if you know anything about Nas's ILLMented album, it came out in 1994, so this movie was probably shot in 1994, released in late 1995, hence why the ILLMented posters are actually on the wall in there, which is really cool. It's things that I always notice, because whenever I'm watching movies, I always look in people's bedrooms and backgrounds for posters and shit. It's just a quirky thing that I always have to notice, because I love posters. But I digress. 12 Monkeys, great movie. I'm coming in at a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic. I could probably talk about this movie all day. I don't want to get in too deep spoiler territory and all this type of stuff, because I really think that it's a movie that you need to check out. And Arrow did a lot of justice with this 4K. It's fantastic. So yeah, 12 Monkeys right there. For special features here, we do have an audio commentary with Terry Gilliam, which I believe is actually ported over from the old DVDs. I'm not sure. I'd have to check mine if it's on there or not. There is a full-length documentary called The Hamster Factor and Other Tales of 12 Monkeys, feature-length documentary. So I didn't have time to watch that, but I really want to. I'm gonna check that out, because I'm enthralled in this film right now. Just all the little Easter eggs and all the little things are throughout this film. It's really cool. It's a really, really cool film. And then there's interviews with Terry Gilliam from 1996 London Film Festival, 12 Monkeys Archives, theatrical trailer, reversible sleeve, things like that. So you guys will see that on the cutaway. But 12 Monkeys, great performances, man. I really think that Brad Pitt knocks this one out the park. I think he's the standout performance in the movie for myself. You know, coming off Seven, and I actually read that Terry Gilliam wasn't sure if Brad Pitt was going to be able to pull off the acting that he wanted. He wanted him to be like kind of double timing, kind of like talking really fast, kind of jittery, just kind of off the wall craziness, right? So rumor has it that Terry Gilliam actually took away Brad Pitt's cigarettes and made him jittery, and it made him actually kind of act like that, and he pulled it off perfect, according to Terry Gilliam, which I think he does. Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis. No knock on Bruce Willis. I know he's going through rough time health-wise and stuff, so it's not a knock. I always love Bruce Willis, but Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis in almost everything, right? He really is Bruce Willis. He does a good job in this, because he kind of plays this character that's like so confused, and he's like undermining himself, and he's not sure the whole movie, right? And it makes sense considering what he's going through. He's going back in time and coming back in the future, and he's like not remembering things, and he's questioning his own sanity and all these type of things. So I think he pulls it up pretty well. Madeline Stowe does a great job as the psychiatrist too. She's fantastic in this. But yeah, overall great film. I feel like I'm just going on and on and on and on. What else could I say about it? Probably a whole lot more if I was to do an in-depth conversation on this. This will be such a fun movie to talk about, because there's so many little cool things in this film, and it's such a cool looking film. Like the idea of the future and stuff looks fantastic in this. I just love it. It's really cool, and there's all these little cool things. And anyways, I'm done. I'm going on and on and on. 12 Monkeys, awesome release from Arrow. Definitely gonna be popping that one in the near future again for another watch, because it's just fantastic. So with that said, that's episode 10, and I'll check you guys later in the next one, which will be coming up in a couple days, actually. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be some more Shaw Brothers goodness. Yes, more Shaw Brothers. So, all right, check you guys later. And as usual, deuces!